A rainy Tuesday afternoon in a fancy suburban neighborhood, the kind where every lawn is manicured and every mailbox matches. Now, picture a grown woman, in designer boots, no less, deliberately kicking a stack of books belonging to a disabled 12-year-old girl in a wheelchair, sending them skittering across the wet pavement, some disappearing into a storm drain. That's the scene I walked into, and let me tell you, it's burned into my memory like a bad dream. My name's Daniel Torres, a single dad and a lawyer who spent 20 years in courtrooms, but nothing prepared me for the rage I felt watching my daughter, Sophie, crumple as her precious books were ruined. What would you do if you saw this happen to your kid? I'm still wrestling with that question, but what unfolded next turned this nightmare into the most satisfying case of my career. We'd moved to Crestwood Heights, a ritzy community just outside Dallas, Texas, 2 months earlier. The schools were top-notch, and the medical specialists Sophie needed were close by. Sophie has spinal muscular atrophy, a condition that weakens her muscles and means she gets around in a power wheelchair. Don't let that fool you. Thuff got a mind sharper than most adults. At 12, she's tearing through college-level books, losing herself in stories ever since her mom passed from cancer when she was 4. Books are her escape, her joy, her everything. When we bought our sleek, modern house in Crestwood, I thought we'd found a fresh start. What I didn't count on was Claudia Bennett, the HOA president, a salon chain owner who strutted around like she owned the place. From the moment we arrived, Claudia made it clear we didn't fit her VY shown of perfection. 3 days in, she cornered me with a fake smile, her voice dripping with condescension. "Mr. Torres, I've noticed your daughters. The VYC is often VY-sible from the street. Could you store it out of sight?" Crestwood prides itself on curb appeal. She meant Sophie's wheelchair, the very thing that gives my girl freedom. I kept my cool. "Mrs. Bennett, my daughter's wheelchair isn't some lawnmower to tuck away. It's part of who she is." Her smile tightened, and she muttered something about property values and how our old neighborhood might have been more suited to Sophie's needs. That was just a start. Letters about our entrance ramp, VY, OLADing guidelines showed up. Snide remarks about community standards echoed in HOA meetings. Sticky notes appeared on Sophie's wheelchair when I left it on our porch for a minute to help her into the car. Annoying? Sure, but I'm a defense litigator. I know how to handle bullies and build a case. Then came that Tuesday. Sophie had been at her book club, hosted by our neighbor, Dr. Margaret Hale, a retired English professor who'd taken Sophie under her wing. Those weekly meetings were Sophie's highlight, a chance to geek out over books with other kids and an adult who saw her brilliance. I was running 15 minutes late to pick her up. Dr. Hale had helped Sophie to the curb with a stack of books, including some rare editions from her personal collection, entrusted to Sophie's care. As I turned onto our street, I saw Claudia marching towards Sophie. Even from a distance, I could tell Sophie was bracing herself, her shoulders stiff but her chin up, like she always does when she's scared but won't show it. I hit the gas, but I was too far when Claudia started while VYing her arms at the books next to Sophie's wheelchair. Then, with a smirk I'll never forget, she swung her foot and sent the books flying, pages flapping, spines cracking, some splashing into a storm drain swollen with rain. I slammed on my brakes as Sophie's face fell, tears welling up. By the time I reached them, she was struggling to maneuver her wheelchair toward the scattered books, her hands shaking. "What the hell are you doing?" I roared, stepping between Claudia and my daughter. Claudia blinked, caught off guard, then puffed up with indignation. Those books were a hazard on the sidewalk. They're an eyesore, and someone could sue the HOA if they tripped. I could barely keep my voice steady. They were neatly stacked next to my daughter while she waited for me. "You destroyed her property." She scoffed. "Don't be dramatic, Daniel. They're just books, cluttering a public space." HOA Rules, Section 4, Paragraph 7. Sophie's small but fierce voice cut through. "Dad, Dr. Hale's first edition Hemingway is in the drain." My heart sank. That book wasn't just valuable, it was a treasure Dr. Hale had lent Sophie because she trusted her. Claudia turned to Sophie, her tone patronizing. "Young lady, maybe this'll teach you about keeping public spaces clear." That's when Dr. Hale stormed out of her house, her silver hair in a tight bun, clutching a tablet and looking like she could burn holes through steel. "That's enough, Claudia," she snapped. "I recorded everything. I started filming when I saw you approach Sophie after I stepped inside for a call. I've got clear footage of you kicking those books, including my rare editions." Claudia's smugness flickered, but she doubled down. "Margaret, you know the rules. Those books were an obstruction." Dr. Hale didn't budge. They were next to a disabled child waiting for her ride. They blocked nothing. "Claudia, I want full replacement value for every damaged book. I picked up a soaked novel, its pages curling, and I want a public apology to my daughter." Claudia laughed, sharp and cold. "Replacement value for old books? Good luck. And if you push this, Daniel, you'll find Crestwood isn't the place for you. My husband, Richard, runs half the real estate in Dallas. We have pull." It was a threat, and she knew it. I smiled the kind of smile I say for court when someone's just dug their own grave. "Is that so, Claudia? Well, since we're trading credentials, I'm a litigator who's argued before the Supreme Court twice and never lost a discrimination case. You've got 24 hours to deliver a written apology to Sophie and a check for those books. After that, I'm coming for you, civil and criminal." Her face paled, but she hissed, "You wouldn't dare. Over books? You'll be laughed out of court." I stepped closer. "Not over books. Over harassing a disabled child. Over destroying property. Over violating the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I bet Sophie's not your first target." Just then, Dr. Aisha Khan, Sophie's neurologist and a new neighbor, walked up, taking the scene Sophie's tears, the ruined books, Claudia's defiance. "What happened?" she asked, her voice calm but commanding. Sophie explained, her voice steadier now. "Mrs. Bennett kicked my books. Dr. Hale's Hemingway is in the drain." Without a word, Dr. Khan knelt by the drain, rolled up her sleeve, and pulled out the waterlogged book. "I saw it from down the street," she said. "It was deliberate." Claudia's eyes darted between us, realizing she was cornered. With a huff, she stormed off, tossing over her shoulder. "You'll hear from our lawyers." I called after her. "And you'll hear from me." That night, after settling Sophie with hot cocoa and her favorite book, I got to work. This wasn't just about books, Anna Maria. It was about a bully who'd been terrorizing our neighborhood. Dr. Hale sent me the video, crystal clear and damning, showing Claudia's deliberate kick and her smug grin. She also dead valuations for the books, including the Hemingway, now with a conservator fighting to save it. Dr. Khan agreed to write a statement, not just about what she saw, but about the emotional toll this could take on a kid like Sophie. Then I took a bigger step. I set up an anonymous online portal for Crestwood residents to share their run-ins with Claudia and the HOA. I expected a handful of replies. By morning, I had 42. The Singhs fined for cooking odors from their curry. The Levys denied a mezuzah on their doorframe. The Carters, whose black foster kids were hassled at the community pool. Worst of all, the Chins, whose autistic son was told to use the clubhouse near VYC entrance because he upset some residents. Claudia wasn't just a nuisance, she was a discriminator hiding behind community standards. The next day, I filed a police report for property destruction, backed by Dr. Hale's video. I sent a complaint to the Department of Justice for ADA and Fair Housing Act violations. When Claudia's 24-hour deadline passed with no apology, I hand-delivered a legal brief to her doorstep, outlining my plan to sue her and the HOA for discrimination, harassment, and damages. 2 hours later, Richard Bennett showed up at my door, red-faced. "Torres, what's this nonsense? Do you know who we are?" I didn't flinch. "I know exactly who you are, and I've got 42 complaints about your wife's bigotry. Want to see the video of her attacking my daughter's books?" His bravado faltered. "Look, Claudia gets carried away with rules. Let's settle this." I handed him my terms: a public apology to Sophie and others, Claudia's resignation, full compensation, a donation to a disability charity, and a total HOA policy overhaul with anti-discrimination training. He balked. "This is absurd." I leaned in. "More absurd than telling an autistic kid to use the back door? You've got 48 hours, or I'm suing and going to press." Word spread fast. Dr. Hale started a book drive for Sophie. Dr. Khan pushed for better accessibility in Crestwood. Councilwoman Emily Zhao, who lived nearby, contacted me after hearing from Dr. Khan. Over coffee, she said, "Daniel, I want to use this case to strengthen Dallas's anti-discrimination laws for HOAs. Can I have your permission?" I said yes, seeing a chance for real change. By the time Richard's deadline hit, the neighborhood was buzzing. Several HOA board members quietly backed me. Richard showed up defeated. "We accept your terms. Claudia resigns tomorrow. The apology and payment are coming." I held firm. "All the terms, Richard, including the policy changes." He nodded. "Just keep the complaints private." I stared him down. "Only if the changes stick. One slip, and it's all public." The next night's emergency HOA meeting was packed. Claudia sat at the board table, her usual swagger gone, replaced by barely contained rage. The board chair, Henry Grayson, opened the meeting. "Mrs. Bennett has an announcement." Claudia stood, gripping my drafted apology, and read it word for word, her voice flat. "I publicly apologized to Sophie Torres for my inexcusable actions in damaging her books. My behavior was discriminatory and wrong. I also apologize to anyone who's felt targeted by HOA policies during my tenure. I'm resigning from the board, effective immediately." The room buzzed, some gasped, others clapped quietly. Claudia sat, humiliated. Henry continued, "The board has approved a full policy review to comply with anti-discrimination laws. We're hiring a consultant for training and forming a diversity committee, chaired by Dr. Aisha Khan." The applause grew louder. Residents who'd stayed silent for years started speaking up, sharing ideas to make Crestwood welcoming for everyone. Afterward, Mrs. Chun, whose son had been shunted to the Sayre VYC entrance, approached me. "Your daughter's lucky to have you," she said, her voice thick. "We've been hiding to avoid trouble." Maybe that was wrong. I shook my head. "It's not your fault. Fighting bullies shouldn't be your job." In the weeks that followed, Crestwood changed. The new diversity committee, with Sophie as its youngest member, pushed for accessible paths, multilingual notices, and cultural events. Dr. Hale launched a community library in the clubhouse, stocked with diverse books and adaptive tech Sophie helped pick. Claudia's salon chain took a hit, clients canceled, a city contract vanished, and her charity board seats disappeared. The leak wasn't from me, I swear, but word travels fast. 6 months later, Crestwood won a national award from the Inclusive Communities Coalition for its turnaround. At the ceremony, Sophie, my shy bookworm, spoke to the crowd. "What happened to me was wrong," she said, her voice clear. "But what our community did after was right. Books teach us the story's not over until the last page. Sometimes the worst chapters lead to the best endings." The audience gave her a standing ovation, and I'll admit, I teared up. "Driving home?" Sophie asked. "Dad, do you think Mrs. Bennett ever got why she was wrong?" I sighed. "Some people are too caught up in themselves to see the pain they cause." She nodded. "I'm glad we didn't leave. Running away just leaves the problem for someone else." I smiled. "You're wiser than most grown-ups, kid." Crestwood's transformation wasn't forced, it happened because we shone a light on the ugliness Claudia hid behind her rules. Discrimination festers in silence, but exposure burns it away. Claudia struggled to rebuild in Houston, where her reputation followed her. Richard filed for divorce, cutting his losses. Justice doesn't always come in a courtroom. Sometimes it's in a community pulling together, or a girl in a wheelchair finding her voice not despite her struggles, but because of them. That's the story of how one cruel act sparked a revolution in our little corner of Dallas, and I wouldn't change a single page.